The ocean around the ruined city was quiet in a way that did not belong to a living sea. It was not the gentle stillness of coral reefs at dawn, or the rolling calm of deep currents far from storms. This was a controlled silence, artificial, imposed. The kind of silence that existed when ancient machines slept beneath kilometers of water, waiting for commands that had not been spoken in 10,000 years. Atlantis rested on the ocean floor of the Pegasus Galaxy, its vast crystalline towers dark, its shield generators dormant but intact, its long halls filled with nothing but drifting silt and the echo of history. The city had been submerged before. It had endured pressure that would crush continents, survived wars that reshaped galaxies, and waited patiently for those worthy or foolish enough to awaken it again. Far above it, something was wrong with the sea. Currents that should have flowed smoothly around submerged spires twisted unnaturally, drawn inward as if pulled by an invisible hand. Pressure waves rippled through the water, not from tectonic movement or Wraith technology, but from something moving with deliberate purpose. Something alive, something powerful enough that the ocean itself responded as if recognizing a master. Arthur Curry did not swim. He moved through the water as if it was an extension of his own body, currents bending instinctively to his will, pressure equalizing without effort, light refracting around him in subtle patterns that felt more like respect than physics. His armor caught the faint glow of bioluminescent life as he descended, scales reflecting blues and greens that shifted with every motion. Trident in hand, he slowed as the massive silhouette of Atlantis emerged from the darkness. He stopped. For the first time since leaving the surface world weeks earlier, Arthur felt something he could not immediately name. It was not fear. It was not awe. It was recognition. The city before him was not his Atlantis. It was wrong in ways he could not fully articulate. The architecture was too precise, too geometric, its towers rising like crystalline thought made solid. Yet beneath that alien design was a familiarity that tugged at him, resonating through his bones and into something deeper. The sea here felt older than his people's legends, older even than the gods his world had named and forgotten. This place had been built by something that understood water not as an obstacle, but as a medium. Arthur extended his senses, reaching out the way he always did, listening to the ocean's voice. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Not animals, not currents, machines. Vast, silent, sleeping systems that answered his presence with a low, harmonic pulse that thrummed through the water like a distant heartbeat. Ancient, his mind supplied, without knowing why. Then the city began to rise. Deep within Atlantis, dormant systems detected a signal they had not felt since their creators fled the galaxy. Not a code, not a command sequence, a presence, one that interacted with the ocean in ways that mirrored ancient interface logic, not through technology, but through something more fundamental. The city's automated protocols interpreted it as a priority anomaly. Power surged, lights flickered on along the city's outer towers, pale blue energy tracing ancient lines of circuitry. Shield emitters activated instinctively, not to repel, but to stabilize. Massive repulsor fields engaged, displacing millions of tons of water as Atlantis began its slow, deliberate ascent toward the surface. Arthur felt it immediately. The ocean pushed back as the city moved, current shifting violently, pressure changing in ways that would tear normal beings apart. He hovered in place, eyes narrowed, watching an entire city tear itself free from the seabed. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "that is not something you see every day." The surface of the ocean above Atlantis erupted. Miles away, waves rose without warning, ships rocked violently, and the sky darkened as displaced water surged outward in concentric rings. A massive dome of shimmering energy breached the surface, followed by towers of pale stone and glowing crystal. Atlantis emerged like a myth, clawing its way back into reality, water cascading from its spires as its shield shimmered and stabilized. Inside the city, alarms echoed through long corridors that had been silent for millennia. Colonel John Shepard was in the middle of a very bad day before it became significantly worse. The control room was alive with activity as technicians and scientists scrambled between consoles, data streaming across ancient displays in languages that only half the room fully understood. The city had risen without command. That alone was bad enough. Cities did not do that, not unless something had gone catastrophically wrong or catastrophically right. Rodney McKay was having what could generously be described as a moment. "This is impossible," he said, hands flying over a console as he pulled up diagnostic after diagnostic. The city does not just decide to surface on its own. There are protocols, safeguards, redundancies stacked on redundancies. This would require an override from an ancient control gene interface or an external power source operating on a scale that frankly should not exist. Elizabeth Weir stood at the center of the room, arms crossed, expression tight but controlled. And yet it happened. "Yes," Rodney snapped. "It happened, which is the problem. I am telling you that the city detected something and interpreted it as an existential priority event. Whatever triggered this was enough to wake up systems that were supposed to stay dormant unless the Wraith showed up with half the galaxy." Shepard leaned back in his chair, spinning it slightly as he looked at the main display showing the ocean around Atlantis. "So, you are saying someone rang the doorbell?" Rodney shot him a look, more like someone punched. The doorbell, the door, the house, and possibly reality itself. The sensors changed. New data flooded the screens, energy signatures spiking and stabilizing in patterns that made Rodney's stomach drop. The city's long-range scanners locked onto a single contact in the water just outside the shield perimeter. A life form, humanoid, very humanoid, and emitting energy readings that were absolutely not human. "What is that?" Weir asked. Rodney stared at the display, silent for a full 3 seconds, which for him was unprecedented. "That," he said slowly, "is a man in the ocean who is making Atlantis think he might be one of its creators." The room went quiet. Shepard leaned forward. "Come again." Before Rodney could respond, another voice cut in from the side of the room. Ronan Dex had entered without anyone noticing, which was impressive given his size and the amount of weaponry he carried at all times. He stopped when he saw the display, his brow furrowing as he took in the image of a lone figure hovering in the water outside the city, trident in hand, long hair flowing freely as if gravity had decided it was optional. Ronan stared. Arthur stared back through the shield. The two locked eyes through kilometers of water and advanced ancient energy fields. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Ronan tilted his head slightly. Arthur tilted his head in exactly the same way. They both seemed to reach the same conclusion at the same time. "What the hell is that?" Ronan said. Arthur mouthed the words silently from outside the shield. "What the hell is that?" Shepard blinked. Did he just mouth words at us? Rodney zoomed in on the image. He is breathing underwater. No tech, no environmental suit, and those energy readings. Elizabeth, I am telling you, the city is reacting to him like he belongs here. As if summoned by the conversation, Atlantis opened a docking bay. Arthur felt it the instant the shield parted, water flowing inward in controlled streams, guided by technology that understood hydrodynamics at a level that made Atlantean engineering from his world look primitive. He did not hesitate. He never did. With a single powerful stroke, he surged forward, passing through the shield and into the city. Water drained away behind him as the bay sealed, leaving him standing on smooth ancient stone as gravity reasserted itself. The city hummed around him, lights brightening as if curious. Arthur straightened, trident resting at his side, eyes scanning the massive chamber. This was not Atlantis, but it was something close enough to make his heart pound. Footsteps echoed. Ronan stepped forward first, blaster rifle raised but not firing, eyes locked on the stranger. Shepard followed, weapon drawn but lowered slightly, with Taylor and McKay just behind him. Arthur looked at them, then at Ronan. Ronan looked at Arthur, then at the trident. The silence stretched. Ronan finally spoke. "You always dress like that? Or is this some kind of intimidation thing?" Arthur glanced down at his armor, then back up. "You always point guns at visitors, or is this your way of saying hello?" Shepard exhaled slowly. "Oh great," he muttered. "Another one." The city lights pulsed softly, as if pleased. The silence after Arthur's last words did not feel hostile. It felt curious, the way predators and warriors assessed each other before deciding whether a fight was necessary. The air inside the docking bay hummed faintly with ancient power, lights adjusting their intensity as if responding to emotional variables no one in the room had consciously set. Ronan lowered his rifle an inch, not enough to be friendly, but enough to signal that he was thinking rather than reacting. Arthur noticed. Warriors always noticed. Shepard cleared his throat. "Okay, so," he said, glancing briefly at Rodney, then back to Arthur. "You are standing inside a flying city that is not supposed to be on the surface, in a galaxy that is not your own, and you just talk to us like this happens every Tuesday. Want to start with who you are?" Arthur rested the butt of his trident against the floor, metal ringing softly against ancient stone. Arthur Curry, King of Atlantis, protector of the oceans. He paused, eyes scanning the chamber again, lingering on the glowing walls, the strange consoles, the city itself. "And apparently not where I am supposed to be." Rodney snorted before he could stop himself. "Of course you are the King of Atlantis." Arthur's gaze snapped to him. "You have heard of me." Rodney waved a hand, vaguely. No, not you specifically. It is just that we also live in Atlantis. Different Atlantis. Very confusing. Frankly, we should have named it something else." "This Atlantis was built by the ancients," Taylor said calmly, stepping forward. Her voice carried respect, but also caution. A people who lived long before us, who mastered the sea and the stars. Arthur turned to her, studying her with new interest. "That explains a few things." Rodney stiffened. "Explains what?" Arthur closed his eyes. For a moment, the city seemed to quiet further. Arthur reached out with his senses, not probing, not forcing, simply listening. The response rolled through him like a tide. Systems awakened slightly. harmonics shifting to accommodate him. Atlantis was not obeying him, but it was acknowledging him. Shepard noticed the way the light subtly changed color. Rodney noticed everything else. Oh no, 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 I do not like that. He is doing something. The city is responding. Elizabeth, the control crystals are reorienting to his presence. Arthur opened his eyes. Your city listens to the ocean the way mine does. Different language, same meaning. Ronan stared at him for a long second. You saying you can control this place? Arthur looked back at Ronan, expression flat. I am saying it knows I exist. That was worse. Shepard rubbed his temple. Rodney, how bad is that? Rodney swallowed. Well, on the bright side, he did not accidentally activate the self-destruct. On the not-so-bright side, the city has flagged him as a potential ancient-level interface anomaly. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Ancient. Shepard nodded. The people who built this place, very advanced, very extinct, and usually very picky about who they listen to. Arthur exhaled slowly. In my world, Atlantis was built by a people who learned to live with the sea, not above it. They vanished long before my time. We inherited fragments, stories, technology we barely understand. He looked down at the floor beneath his feet. This place feels like they're cousins, or their ancestors. Rodney stared at him. That is not how evolution works. Arthur smiled faintly. The ocean disagrees. The city hummed again, deeper this time. Ronan shifted his weight. I do not like him agreeing with the building. Shepard nodded. Yeah, me neither. Elizabeth Weir stepped forward then, authority settling into her voice, the way it always did when situations went sideways. Arthur Curry, she said. I am Elizabeth Weir. I am responsible for this city and the people in it. You arrived here without warning and triggered systems we barely control. I need to know whether you are a threat. Arthur met her gaze evenly. If I were a threat, your city would already be broken. Rodney opened his mouth, then closed it. Shepard winced. That did not help. Arthur continued. I did not come here to conquer anything. I was following a disturbance in the sea. A call. He paused. It felt like home calling to something it recognized. Weir exchanged a look with Rodney. The city did that, Rodney said quietly. We have seen it before. With Shepard. With those who carry the ancient gene. But this is different. Different how? Shepard asked. Rodney gestured helplessly at Arthur. He is not using ancient technology. He is not interfacing through consoles or gene therapy. He is resonating with the city on a biological and environmental level. The systems are interpreting him as compatible through... I do not even have a word for this yet. Arthur tilted his head. Your builders shaped water the way we shape steel. That kind of thinking leaves marks, even after millennia. Taylor stepped closer. You are not Wraith, she said. You are not from Pegasus. Arthur shook his head. Another ocean. Another world. Ronan narrowed his eyes. Then how did you get here? Arthur hesitated. That was the part he did not fully understand himself. I was investigating a rupture beneath the sea. Something tore through currents like a blade. Light where there should not have been any. He frowned slightly. Then there was pressure. Not physical. Directional. Like the ocean itself, folded. Rodney's eyes widened. A wormhole. Shepard sighed. Of course it was. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared. Not the shrill panic of a full city alert, but a sharp warning tone that made everyone straighten. Rodney spun back to the console. Unidentified hyperspace signatures. Multiple. Wraith. Ronan grinned. Now this feels familiar. Arthur turned toward the main display as it shifted, showing dark shapes tearing out of hyperspace beyond the horizon. Wraith ships moved like predators, elongated and cruel, their organic hulls pulsing faintly as they adjusted to real space. Arthur felt them before he saw them. The ocean recoiled. His expression hardened. "Those are not of the sea." "No," Shepard said. "They are worse." Rodney brought up tactical overlays. 3 hives, escorting cruisers. They must have detected the city surfacing. Ronan hefted his weapon. "Good. I was starting to think today would be boring." Arthur watched the ship silently. "They feed," he said. Everyone looked at him. Arthur continued. "Not like animals, like parasites. I can feel it. They drain life. The water around them is thinner." Taylor's jaw tightened. "That is an accurate description." Arthur turned to Weir. "You have fought them?" Weir nodded. "For years." Arthur nodded once. "Then allow me to help." Rodney laughed. "Oh no, 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 no. We do not just let random sea kings fight galaxy-level vampires from space." Arthur looked at him. "You woke the city because it recognized me. That suggests your builders might disagree." As if on cue, a nearby console activated on its own. Glyphs cascaded across the screen, resolving into a schematic. Rodney froze. "That console is locked. No one was touching it." The schematic highlighted defensive systems, shield harmonics, power routing through the city's outer towers. The configuration shifted subtly, aligning with patterns Rodney had never seen before. Arthur stepped closer, not touching anything. "Your city wants to adapt," Rodney whispered. "It is rewriting its own defensive algorithms." Shepard looked between Arthur and the screen, based on him. Arthur clenched his fist slightly. "I can amplify water pressure, currents, electrical potential. If your shields can carry it, I can turn the ocean itself against them." Ronan's grin widened. "I like him." Weir took a breath. "All right," she said. "Arthur Curry, you just arrived in a galaxy at war. If what you are saying is true, you may be the most powerful variable we have ever encountered. But understand this, you act with us, not above us." Arthur met her gaze and inclined his head. A king who rules alone rules nothing. The first Wraith darts launched. Atlantis' shield flared as energy blasts struck it, rippling across the dome. Arthur stepped forward, trident humming softly. He closed his eyes. The ocean answered. The first impact against Atlantis' shield rolled across the city like distant thunder. Energy rippled outward, blue and white, light dancing across the dome as Wraith weapons tested its strength. Inside the city, consoles flared brighter, ancient systems compensating automatically, but something else moved beneath the calculations, something instinctive. Arthur felt it like a tightening current. The ocean pressed inward, drawn toward the shield not by gravity but by intent. Millions of tons of water shifted subtly, aligning around the city as if waiting for instruction. Arthur opened his eyes, pupils briefly glowing with reflected light from the shield. "Now," he said quietly, "they know we are here." Shepard watched the tactical display as more Wraith darts poured from the hive ships. "Rodney, how long can the shield hold?" Rodney didn't look away from the console. "Against this many? Hours, maybe. Less if they bring the full power of the hives to bear. And before you ask, no, we cannot outrun them underwater without risking structural damage." Arthur stepped closer to the edge of the docking bay, staring through the transparent barrier at the chaos beyond. "You do not need to outrun them," Ronan snorted. "You got a better idea." Arthur tightened his grip on the trident. "I will remind them that this is the sea. Before anyone could object, the city shifted. Not physically, perceptually. Atlantis's outer towers glowed brighter as power rerouted through conduits that had not been active since the ancients abandoned the city. Rodney's hands flew over the controls. What is happening? These systems are ancient, pre-evacuation ancient. The city is opening pressure modulation nodes across the entire shield surface. Arthur placed one hand against the transparent barrier. "Do not fight it," he murmured. "Guide it." Rodney stared at him. "I do not take instructions from men in scale armor." The city pulsed. Rodney swallowed. "But I can supervise." Arthur closed his eyes again. Outside the shield, the ocean changed. Currents accelerated, spiraling inward, compressing water into dense, rotating masses. Pressure built rapidly, not uniformly, but in focused lanes aligned with the Wraith ship's approach vectors. The sea itself became a weapon, sculpted with precision that defied conventional hydrodynamics. The first Wraith cruiser slowed. Its organic hull creaked under forces it was never designed to withstand. Water pressure increased exponentially around it, crushing external structures, collapsing launch bays before more darts could deploy. Ronan stared at the display. "He is squeezing the ocean." Shepard blinked. Like a fist, the Wraith noticed. A hive ship shifted position, adjusting its shields, attempting to compensate. Energy flared as it fired a sustained beam at the city, the blast tearing through the water with terrifying force. Arthur grimaced. Too blunt, he raised the trident. Lightning flickered faintly along its prongs, not from the sky, but from the charged particles in the water itself. Arthur redirected the flow, channeling electrical potential through the compressed currents. The ocean lit up. A web of bioluminescent energy surged outward, slamming into the Wraith cruiser. The ship convulsed as systems overloaded, its organic circuitry screaming under a combination of pressure and electromagnetic disruption. Rodney gaped. "That is not possible. Water should disperse that energy, not focus it." Arthur opened his eyes. "Only if you do not listen to it." The cruiser imploded, not explosively, but catastrophically, collapsing inward as its structure failed all at once. Debris scattered, instantly crushed, and carried away by the surrounding pressure. Ronan let out a low whistle. "I officially vote we keep him." The remaining Wraith ships retreated slightly, reassessing. Inside the hive ships, something akin to unease spread through the Wraith collective. This was not technology they could adapt to easily. This was the environment itself turning hostile in ways their evolution had never prepared them for. Arthur felt their hunger. Disgust curled in his gut. "You feed on worlds," he said softly, "on oceans that never had a choice." He extended his awareness further. Deep, far deeper than Atlantis's immediate surroundings. Something stirred. Far below, in trenches untouched by light, ancient creatures shifted uneasily. Leviathans older than civilizations, beings the Wraith had learned to avoid instinctively. Arthur did not command them. He asked. They answered. The water around the hive ships darkened as massive shapes moved through it, not visible yet, but unmistakable in their displacement. Sonar echoes rippled through the ocean, returning images that made Wraith sensors spike in alarm. Rodney's console lit up. Multiple massive biological signatures. Massive, bigger than the hives. Shepard stared. "You can talk to those too." Arthur did not smile. "They were here before us all." The Wraith hives opened fire again, this time indiscriminately, energy lances cutting through the water, illuminating the dark with violent flashes. One beam struck a leviathan midsection. The response was immediate. The creature surged forward, its sheer mass displacing water like a tidal wave. It slammed into the hive ship, not biting, not tearing, simply colliding with unstoppable force. The hive ship's hull buckled. Arthur clenched his jaw. Enough. He brought the trident down, striking the deck with a resonant clang that echoed through Atlantis. The city responded. Atlantis' shield shifted from passive defense to active projection. Pressure modulation nodes fired in sequence, creating directed shockwaves that rippled outward through the water, synchronized with Arthur's own manipulation of the currents. The ocean itself became a battering ram. 2 more cruisers were crushed, their structures failing as if made of paper. The remaining hive ship attempted to jump to hyperspace. It failed. Arthur felt the space around it distort as it tried to tear reality open. He forced the surrounding water into a hyper-dense shell, disrupting the field alignment. The hive ship screamed. Then it died. Silence returned to the ocean, broken only by drifting debris and the slow retreat of disturbed currents. Inside Atlantis, no one spoke. Rodney finally sat down. I have spent my entire life studying advanced physics, ancient technology, and the limits of human potential. And you just weaponized the ocean. Arthur turned back toward them. The ocean has always been a weapon. It simply prefers not to be. Ronan stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, that tracks. Shepard exhaled slowly. Well, that is one way to make an entrance. Alarms quieted. Systems stabilized. Atlantis' lights dimmed slightly, returning to a calmer state. Rodney studied the readouts. The city is still adapting. It is incorporating his presence into its long-term defensive models. That should not be possible. Arthur frowned. Your city is alive, Rodney bristled. It is not alive. Arthur met his gaze. Then why does it listen? Before Rodney could respond, Taylor spoke. You fought the Wraith without hatred, she said. Only resolve. Arthur nodded. Hate poisons the sea. Weir stepped forward again. Arthur Curry, you have just shifted the balance of power in this galaxy. The Wraith will not forget this. Arthur looked out at the horizon, where the ocean met the sky. Neither will the ocean. Shepard rubbed his neck. Okay, so, you are a king from another world. You command the sea. Atlantis thinks you are an ancient, and the Wraith are probably making very angry clicking noises right now. Arthur looked back at him. That seems accurate. Ronan stepped closer, studying Arthur openly now. You fight like a warrior, but you talk like a priest. Arthur snorted softly. I grew up between worlds. That does things to you. Rodney stood. We need to run scans, medical scans, genetic scans. I need to know why the city thinks you are compatible with ancient systems. Arthur hesitated, then nodded. I will allow it. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Allow. Arthur glanced at him. I'm trying to be polite. Ronan grinned. Good start. As they turned to leave the docking bay, the city shifted again. Not in alarm, in recognition. A central console illuminated ahead of them, symbols resolving into a configuration none of the Atlantis team had ever seen before. Rodney stopped dead. Oh no. Shepard sighed. What now? Rodney pointed. That console is offering him access. Arthur felt it too. A pull, an invitation, something ancient, curious, and very awake. The city wanted to know him. Arthur took a slow breath. This place is not just a city, is it? Rodney shook his head. It never was. Arthur stepped forward. Then we should talk. Arthur stood before the illuminated console, as if it were an old acquaintance he could not quite place. The glyphs on its surface flowed in slow, deliberate patterns, shifting in response to his presence, rather than any physical input. The city was not waiting for commands, it was observing. Rodney circled the console like a nervous animal. This console has been locked since before we arrived. We tried everything. Gene interface, brute force decryption, even a few highly inadvisable power surges. Nothing. And now it is doing this. He gestured helplessly at Arthur. Because of him. Arthur raised a hand, but stopped short of touching the surface. It wants consent, he said. Shepard blinked. You sure about that? Arthur nodded. Whatever built this understood choice. The sea does not respond well to force. Neither does this city. Weir studied him carefully. And if you give it what it wants, Arthur met her gaze. Then we all learn something. Rodney inhaled sharply. I would like to formally register my objection to letting an extra-dimensional Sea King interface with ancient technology we barely understand. Ronan shrugged. I would like to formally register my curiosity. Tayla inclined her head. And I would like to hear what the city has to say. Arthur closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself. Then he placed his palm against the console. The reaction was immediate. Light flared outward, not violently, but expansively, rippling through the chamber in concentric waves. The city's hum deepened, resonance building as dormant systems awakened in sequence. Across Atlantis, lights brightened. Power conduits thrummed with renewed energy. Arthur gasped. Information flooded him, not as words or images, but as sensation. Memories encoded in architecture, intent woven into stone. The ancients had not merely built Atlantis. They had taught it how to think in terms of balance, of ecosystems, of stewardship. Arthur staggered slightly. Ronan caught his arm without thinking. Easy. Arthur laughed softly, breathless. Your builders loved the ocean. Rodney froze. Loved. Arthur nodded. They learned from it, modeled entire systems after its behavior. Adaptive, self-correcting, relentless when threatened. The console shifted again, projecting a three-dimensional map of the Pegasus Galaxy. Wraith-controlled territories pulsed ominously across it, but something new appeared as well. Vast networks beneath the surface of countless ocean worlds. Ancient infrastructure, long forgotten. Rodney's voice trembled. These are undersea facilities, power relays, shield nodes. They are everywhere. Shepard frowned. Why have we never seen them? Arthur answered, without looking away. Because they were designed to remain silent unless the ocean itself was threatened. Weir's eyes widened. The Wraith feed on humans, not oceans. Arthur's expression darkened. They feed on life. Oceans are life. The map zoomed in on a world far from Atlantis. A water planet marked with warning glyphs. Arthur stiffened. That world is screaming. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the city's alarms blared again. This time, sharper, urgent. Rodney spun to the console. Wraith activity spike. Multiple hives converging on the coordinates Arthur just highlighted. Shepard cursed. They know. Arthur pulled his hand away from the console. They felt the city respond to me. The sea carries news faster than light if you know how to listen. Ronan grinned. Feral. Good, let them come. Arthur shook his head. Not here. They are not attacking Atlantis. They are hunting something else. The display shifted. Sensor feeds streamed in. Wraith ships descending toward the water world, deploying harvesters not toward settlements, but into the oceans themselves. Tayla's voice was tight. They are draining the seas. Arthur's jaw clenched. Unacceptable. Weir looked at Shepard. We cannot let them take that world. Shepard nodded. We will not. Rodney raised a finger. Logistical issue. That planet is days away by hyperspace. We cannot get there in time to stop a full-scale harvest. Arthur closed his eyes again. Yes, we can. The room stilled. Arthur opened his eyes. Resolve burning there. Your city can move through water and space. My people learn to move through something else. Shepard stared. You are not suggesting what I think you are suggesting. Arthur smiled grimly. You have a Stargate. I have currents. Rodney's mouth fell open. You want to fold oceanic pressure through a wormhole. Arthur nodded. The sea is connected everywhere. Distance is an illusion. Rodney laughed hysterically. That is insane. That is completely insane. The energy requirements alone would destabilize the gate. Arthur stepped closer. Unless the gate is not carrying matter, only intent. The city hummed approvingly. Rodney stopped laughing. The gate room was alive with controlled chaos as personnel rushed to stations. The Stargate stood silent at the far end, its ancient symbols etched into metal older than most civilizations. Arthur stood before it, trident resting lightly in his grip. Ronan watched him. You do this a lot, Arthur shrugged. I try not to break things. Shepard smirked. That makes one of us. Rodney's voice came over the intercom, rapid and breathless. We have a lock. I do not understand how, but the gate is responding to Arthur's presence. The dialing sequence is adjusting dynamically. The chevrons began to engage. Arthur placed one hand on the gate's surface as the wormhole formed, water shimmering across the event horizon instead of the usual blue energy. The air grew heavy with moisture, the scent of the deep ocean filling the room. Arthur spoke softly. Hear me. The wormhole roared. Through it poured not water, but force, pressure. A tidal surge of intent carried across space-time, emerging in the distant ocean world like the sudden arrival of a god. On the other side, Wraith harvesters shuddered as currents reversed violently. Entire fleets were caught in massive underwater maelstroms, their organic hulls twisting under forces that no technology could fully counter. Arthur stepped through the gate. Shepard cursed. He just went through. Ronan did not hesitate. Then so do we. The team followed, emerging into chaos. The ocean world was a storm of impossible scale. Currents clashed, water spiraled into massive columns that reached from the abyss to the surface. Wraith ships were trapped, dragged, crushed. Arthur hovered at the center of it all, trident raised, eyes glowing faintly. You do not feed here, he said, his voice carrying through water and air alike. A Wraith queen emerged from the largest hive, her psychic presence lashing outward in fury. You are not of this galaxy. Arthur turned to face her. Neither were your victims. The queen screamed as Arthur brought the trident down. The sea answered with catastrophic force, collapsing the hive ship inward and tearing it apart molecule by molecule. Silence followed. The ocean calmed. The surviving Wraith fled. Shepard stared at Arthur. You just defended an entire planet. Arthur exhaled slowly. The ocean protects itself. Back in Atlantis, the city settled into a new equilibrium. Systems stabilized at higher baseline levels. Ancient displays updated. Long dormant protocols now active. Rodney stared at the data. The city has designated him as Guardian-class interface. Shepard frowned. That sounds important. Rodney nodded slowly. It is. Arthur stood at a balcony overlooking the sea as the sun dipped below the horizon. Weir approached quietly. You changed things today. Arthur nodded. So did your people. You fight monsters with courage instead of dominion. That matters." Weir smiled faintly. "You sound like you are staying." Arthur looked out at the ocean. The sea does not abandon those who need it. Night settled over Atlantis in a way that felt different than before. The city's lights reflected off the calm surface of the ocean, their glow steady, confident, as if the ancient structure had finally remembered what it was meant to be. Power flowed through conduits that had been dormant for millennia. The city was no longer simply occupied, it was awake. Arthur stood at the edge of one of the city's highest balconies, bare feet planted on cool stone, trident resting against his shoulder. Below him, the sea stretched endlessly, currents whispering secrets that only he could hear. There was tension in those whispers now, anticipation. The Wraith had fled, but they would not forget what had happened. Predators learned quickly. Behind him, footsteps approached. Shepard leaned against the railing a few feet away, arms crossed, watching Arthur with open curiosity rather than suspicion. "You know," he said, "most people who show up here do not immediately get classified as Guardian class whatever that was." Arthur smiled faintly. "I have never been most people." Shepard nodded. "Fair." For a moment, they watched the waves in silence. "So," Shepard continued, "you said you are a king." Arthur's expression tightened just a little. "I was born to two worlds. One rejected me, one feared me. I claimed the throne because someone had to protect what neither side truly understood." Shepard glanced at him. "Sounds exhausting." Arthur laughed quietly. "Leadership often is." Shepard studied him for a moment. "We have kings where I come from, too. Most of them do not last very long once people realize they are not gods." Arthur looked back at him. "Good. Gods should not rule." Inside the city, Rodney McKay was still very much not calm. "This is unprecedented," he muttered, pacing back and forth in the control room. "The city has reclassified multiple systems, defensive arrays, environmental harmonics. Even the ZPM draw is stabilizing in ways I did not think were possible." He turned to Elizabeth Weir. "Do you realize what this means?" Weir folded her arms. "It means Atlantis trusts him." Rodney waved his hands. "No, it means Atlantis thinks he is functionally equivalent to an ancient environmental steward. That category should not exist." Taylor stepped closer to the display. "Perhaps the ancients anticipated beings like him." Rodney scoffed. "You do not design citywide defense protocols around mythical sea kings." Taylor met his gaze calmly. "Perhaps you would have if you were an ancient." Rodney stopped pacing. That was unfairly insightful. A chime sounded. Rodney spun. "Oh, come on. What now?" The console displayed new data. Incoming signal. Not Wraith, not Asgard, not from Earth. Rodney frowned. "It is coming from beneath the city." Weir's brow furrowed. Beneath. The city responded before they could ask more questions. A section of the central ocean floor display shifted, revealing a massive structure far below Atlantis. Something that had not appeared on any scan before. Rodney's voice dropped. "That was not there yesterday." Arthur's voice echoed from the doorway. "Yes, it was." Everyone turned. Arthur stepped into the control room, expression serious. "The city hid it, even from you." Rodney stared. "Why?" Arthur approached the display. "Because it was never meant for the stars. It was meant for the sea." The image resolved further. A colossal spherical structure embedded deep beneath the seabed, covered in patterns that echoed both ancient glyphs and designs Arthur recognized instinctively. Arthur's breath caught. This is a sanctuary. Taylor tilted her head. For whom? Arthur closed his eyes. For life that could not flee when the stars burned. Rodney's mind raced. You were saying the ancients built an ark, underwater. Arthur nodded. When the Wraith rose, when entire worlds fell, the ancients preserved what they could. Oceans, species, knowledge encoded in living systems rather than machines. Weir's voice was quiet. And you can access it. Arthur did not answer immediately. The city can, he said finally. Through me. Ronan leaned against a wall, arms crossed. So let me get this straight. There is a giant underwater vault full of ancient sea monsters and knowledge, and the city only opens it because it thinks you are one of the builders. Arthur glanced at him. I prefer the term caretaker. Ronan grinned. Of course you do. Before Rodney could launch into another spiral, alarms flared again. Not citywide, localized, Rodney cursed. Motion detected beneath the city. Multiple contacts. Fast. Arthur stiffened. They followed the disturbance. Shepard's hand went to his weapon. Wraith. Arthur shook his head. Something else. The ocean beneath Atlantis churned violently. Sensor feeds struggled to track the incoming shapes as they moved with unnatural speed, slipping through pressure gradients like ghosts. Rodney's console screamed warnings. These things are not ships, they are biological, but not Wraith. Their energy signature is wrong. Arthur's jaw tightened. They are hunters. Ronan straightened. Of what? Arthur met his gaze. Of me. The water below erupted. Massive forms slammed against Atlantis' shield, not with brute force, but with precision. Bladed appendages scraped across the energy barrier, testing it. The creatures were sleek, armored, designed to kill in deep pressure environments. Arthur recognized them instantly. Trench guardians, he whispered. Rodney blinked. That sounds bad, Arthur nodded. They were built to hunt Atlanteans who went rogue. Shepard stared at him. You have those too, Arthur grimaced. Every empire does. The creatures circled the city, coordinating their movements, probing for weaknesses. Arthur clenched his trident. They will not breach the shield, but they will not leave either. Rodney frowned. Then what do they want? Arthur looked at the deep structure beneath the city. They want the sanctuary. The room fell silent. Weir spoke carefully. If they gain access, Arthur's expression hardened. Then nothing the ancients saved will survive. Shepard took a breath. All right, new rule. Nobody touches the ancient underwater ark without our say-so. Arthur shook his head. They will not ask. The largest of the creatures moved forward, emitting a low-frequency pulse that rippled through the water and into Atlantis' hull. Systems flickered momentarily. Rodney's eyes widened. That frequency, it is interacting with ancient tech. Arthur stepped forward. They were designed to override environmental safeguards, to erase anything deemed a threat to the balance. Ronan frowned. You are the threat, Arthur met his gaze. I disrupted the order they were built to enforce. Shepard exhaled. Figures. Arthur turned back to the city. Open the deep channels, Rodney protested. Absolutely not. Arthur's voice was calm, but firm. If they fight here, the city will suffer. If I meet them below, the ocean decides. Weir hesitated only a second. Do it. Rodney stared at her. You cannot be serious. Weir met his gaze. He has earned our trust. Arthur inclined his head. Thank you. The city obeyed. A massive aperture opened beneath Atlantis, water flowing smoothly as ancient systems aligned. Arthur stepped forward, then paused. "Ronan," he said. Ronan looked at him. "You fight like me," Arthur smiled. "Then watch my back." Ronan grinned. "About time." They dove together into the deep. The ocean closed around them, dark and crushing. The hunters moved. Arthur raised his trident. The sea roared. The pressure in the deep was immense, enough to pulverize steel and collapse mountains. For Arthur, it was familiar, almost comforting. For Ronan, it was hell held at bay only by Atlantis's adaptive field generator wrapped tightly around his body. Even with it, he felt the weight pressing in from all sides, a constant reminder that this was not a battlefield meant for humans. The hunters moved first. They came out of the darkness like living torpedoes, their bodies sleek and segmented, armored plates overlapping with organic precision. Bioluminescent patterns flared along their sides as they accelerated, eyes glowing with cold, engineered purpose. Arthur felt their intent before they struck. No malice, no hunger, only function, erase anomaly. Arthur surged forward to meet them. Ronan fired instinctively, energy bolts streaking through the water. The blast slowed one of the creatures, but did not stop it. The hunter twisted, adapting its trajectory mid-charge, closing the distance faster than Ronan expected. Arthur intercepted it. The trident flashed, not cutting, but redirecting. Arthur twisted his body and used the creature's own momentum, slamming it into the seabed with catastrophic force. Sediment erupted in a blinding cloud. Another hunter struck from behind. Ronan shouted. Arthur rolled, armor scraping against stone, as bladed limbs sliced through the space where his head had been a second earlier. Arthur responded with a concussive wave of pressure, blasting outward and sending the creature tumbling. Ronan grinned ferociously. "I like your style." Arthur did not smile. "These are scouts," he said. "The real ones are slower, smarter." As if summoned by his words, the water darkened further. A massive shape emerged from the abyss below, dwarfing the other hunters. Its body was thicker, more heavily armored, etched with symbols Arthur recognized with a tightening in his chest. Ancient control marks. This one was not just a hunter, it was a warden. Rodney's voice crackled over the comms, strained. "I am reading a massive power spike. That thing is interfacing with the city's lower systems." Arthur clenched his jaw. "It is trying to assert command." The warden emitted a deep, resonant pulse. The surrounding hunters froze momentarily, then repositioned with frightening coordination. Ronan raised his weapon. "Tell me what to shoot." Arthur shook his head. "Do not kill them." Ronan stared. "You sure?" Arthur nodded. "They are not evil. They are following instructions that are 10,000 years out of date," the warden charged. Arthur met it head on. The impact sent shockwaves through the water, rippling outward in visible distortion. Arthur was driven backward, armor scraping, trident vibrating violently in his grip. The warden was strong, stronger than anything Arthur had faced beneath the sea of his own world. It was designed to fight beings like him. Good, Arthur thought grimly. So was I. He shifted tactics. Instead of resisting the pressure, he embraced it, drawing on the crushing weight of the deep and channeling it inward. The water around the warden condensed, not trapping it, but slowing it, forcing it to expend more energy with every movement. The warden adapted, venting power through its armor, destabilizing the compression field. Arthur grimaced. Too clever. Ronan flanked it, firing at exposed joints. The shots did not penetrate deeply, but they distracted it long enough for Arthur to act. Arthur struck the warden's chest plate with the trident, not with force, with resonance. The trident vibrated, emitting a harmonic pulse tuned to the same frequency Arthur had felt from the city's deepest systems. The warden froze mid-charge, its bioluminescent markings flickering erratically. Arthur pressed his hand against its armor. "Stand down," he said. The warden resisted. Arthur pushed harder, not physically, but conceptually. He projected intent through the resonance, rewriting the command hierarchy encoded in the creature's core. "You were built to protect life," he continued. "This sanctuary preserves it. I am not your enemy," the warden shuddered. Rodney's voice rose in pitch. "Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Its power output is fluctuating wildly." The warden's eyes dimmed slightly. It withdrew. The surrounding hunters hesitated, then slowly backed away, maintaining distance, but no longer attacking. Ronan stared. "You just talked it down." Arthur exhaled. "I reminded it why it exists." The water calmed incrementally, the crushing pressure easing as the creatures retreated into the darkness. Arthur watched them go, unease settling in his chest. "They will report back," Ronan frowned. "To who?" Arthur looked upward, toward the city far above, to anything still listening. Back in Atlantis, the city absorbed the aftermath like a living thing recovering from injury. Systems stabilized, deep channel access sealed, ancient safeguards reasserted. Rodney sagged against a console. "I need a drink, or a week, possibly both." Weir watched the data scroll. "The sanctuary remains sealed." Arthur nodded. "For now." Shepard looked at him. "What happens when they come back?" Arthur met his gaze steadily. "Then we decide whether the past still has the right to dictate the future." The gate room. Lights flickered as Arthur and Ronan returned through the aperture, water draining away as the city sealed behind them. Ronan removed his field generator, shaking off the lingering pressure. "That," he said, "was fun. Terrifying, but fun." Arthur chuckled softly. "You are a good warrior," Ronan smirked. "You are not so bad yourself, Sea King." Rodney approached, eyes narrowed. "You rewrote ancient bioconstructs using harmonics and intent. Do you have any idea what that implies?" Arthur met his gaze. "That your builders believed consciousness was not limited to one form." Rodney pinched the bridge of his nose. "I hate it when mystical nonsense makes scientific sense." Weir folded her arms. "The Wraith will feel this disturbance, and whatever else is out there." Arthur nodded. "The sea has been quiet for too long." Taylor studied him thoughtfully. "You are changing this galaxy." Arthur shook his head. "I am reminding it what balance looks like." Outside, the ocean stretched endlessly, ancient currents shifting as words spread through water and life alike. Something had awakened in Atlantis. And it was not just the city. Atlantis did not sleep. It never truly had, not even during the long millennia beneath the waves when its halls lay silent and its people gone. The city listened. It remembered. And now it watched Arthur with a focus that bordered on recognition. Arthur felt it the moment he stepped away from the gate room. Not surveillance, not threat, curiosity. The corridors hummed softly as he walked, crystalline walls catching the ambient glow of the city. The sound resonated through his bones in a way no human architecture ever had. This place was alive, not metaphorically, but functionally. A thinking city built by minds that understood oceans as more than empty space. Shepard noticed Arthur slowing. "You feel it too?" he asked. Arthur nodded. "It is awake." Rodney nearly tripped over his own feet. It has always been awake. Not like this, Arthur replied. This is awareness directed outward, toward me. Rodney stopped walking. That is not comforting. They entered the central control chamber, the heart of Atlantis. Consoles flared to life as Arthur stepped inside, glyphs rearranging themselves with subtle precision. The city was adjusting, reconfiguring access permissions in real time. Elizabeth Weir stood at the center platform, hands clasped behind her back. The city has elevated you to a provisional clearance level, she said calmly. Rodney sputtered. It gave him a clearance level. The city does not do that. It barely tolerates us. Arthur tilted his head. Provisional, Weir nodded. Conditional recognition. It seems to believe you are a legacy construct or a derivative lineage. Arthur absorbed that quietly. In my world, Atlantis was a kingdom. Here, it is a memory that refused to die. Taylor stepped closer. You are ancestor adjacent. Arthur met her gaze. I am not one of them. No, she agreed. But you resonate with their intent, protection, balance, guardianship. Ronan leaned against a console. So the city likes him. Great. Does that mean it will stop trying to drown us every time he gets emotional? The city lights dimmed briefly, then stabilized. Rodney stared. I am choosing to interpret that as a yes. A sudden alert cut through the chamber. Long-range sensors, Shepard said, already moving. Multiple hyperspace ruptures. Wraith. Arthur straightened. How many? Rodney swallowed. A scouting armada, 3 hives, dozens of cruisers. Ronan grinned. Now this feels familiar. Arthur closed his eyes. They felt the resonance when the warden fell. Taylor stiffened. They will not ignore it. Arthur opened his eyes. No, they will come to claim it. The sea stirred far below the city, currents shifting with purpose. Creatures ancient and vast adjusted their migration patterns instinctively, responding to disturbances they did not consciously understand. Arthur reached out, not to the city, to the ocean itself. He felt life answer, not speech, not obedience, recognition. Shepard watched him carefully. You are doing that thing again, Arthur smiled faintly. Listening. Rodney frowned. I do not like that the ocean is listening back. The first Wraith ships dropped from hyperspace like predatory shadows. Their hulls pulsed with organic light, weapons charging as they oriented toward the city. Arthur stepped forward. They will attempt to breach from below. Shepard blinked. How do you know? Arthur's voice was calm. That is how one hunts a city that believes itself invulnerable. The Wraith understood oceans differently than humans did. To them, the deep was not hostile. It was cover, concealment, a place to approach unseen. They were wrong. Arthur moved to the edge of the platform, placing his palm against the crystalline floor. Atlantis responded. Lower oceanic access nodes unlocked, not to intruders, but to him. Rodney stared at the cascading glyphs. It just handed him control of the deep shield grid. Weir's voice was steady, but her eyes were wide. Arthur, what are you about to do? Arthur breathed in slowly. What Atlantis was built to do before it forgot who it was. Below the city, the ocean moved. Not violently, not suddenly, purposefully. Pressure gradients shifted. Thermal currents reversed. Ancient tectonic stabilizers awakened. Systems designed not for warships, but for planetary survival. The Wraith cruisers descending through the depths slowed, then stalled, then began to strain. Their organic hulls creaked as pressure increased, far beyond what even their adaptive biology could tolerate. Bioluminescent veins flared as internal systems struggled to compensate. The Wraith sensed it. Fear rippled through the hive mind. They fired. Energy lances tore into the ocean, detonating in blinding flashes. The water absorbed the impact, dispersing it harmlessly. Arthur's voice echoed softly through the chamber. The sea does not fear you. The pressure intensified. One cruiser imploded, its hull collapsing inward as if crushed by an invisible fist. Another attempted to flee, engine screaming as it fought the currents dragging it down. It did not succeed. Ronan let out a low whistle. Remind me never to piss off the ocean when you are nearby. Shepard watched the tactical display. Arthur, if you keep this up, they will bring the hives closer. Full bombardment. Arthur nodded. I know. He released his hold. The pressure eased instantly. The remaining Wraith ships retreated, scarred but alive, limping back toward the stars. The ocean settled. Atlantis hummed with quiet satisfaction. Rodney slumped into a chair. We just repelled a Wraith scouting armada without firing a single drone. Shepard exhaled. That is going to get their attention. Taylor looked at Arthur with reverence. You turned the sea into a weapon without making it one. Arthur shook his head. I reminded it that it was not helpless. Weir approached him. You cannot do that forever. Arthur met her gaze. No, but neither can they keep coming as they have. A silence fell over the chamber. Then the city spoke, not in words, in images. Ancient memories flooded the central display. Atlantis rising from the sea. Guardians shaped like living tides. Keepers who stood between worlds and extinction. Rodney's voice was barely a whisper. It remembers. Arthur watched the images with a heavy heart. So do I. Shepard crossed his arms. Looks like Atlantis just found its king again. Arthur smiled faintly. No. He turned away from the display. It found its purpose, and so did I. Far across the galaxy, in the depths of a Wraith hive ship, a queen screamed as the echo of the sea's will tore through the neural chorus. Atlantis was no longer prey, and the ocean had chosen a voice. The Wraith did not panic. They adapted. Across the void, hive ships withdrew, not in defeat, but in calculation. The echoes of pressure and resistance were cataloged, analyzed, folded into strategy. The sea itself had become hostile. That was new. That required change. In Atlantis, the aftermath felt deceptively calm. Arthur stood alone on one of the city's outer balconies, staring out across the endless ocean. The surface was glassy, serene, betraying nothing of the violence it had unleashed moments earlier. Shepard joined him quietly. You just rewrote the battlefield. Arthur did not turn. The battlefield was always here. They simply assumed it belonged to them. Shepard leaned on the railing. You know what you did scared the hell out of Rodney. Arthur smiled slightly. That seems to be a pattern. Shepard hesitated. You also scared the city. Arthur glanced at him. No, I reminded it. Below them, Atlantis pulsed gently, systems recalibrating. Energy flowed differently now. Ancient protocols that had lain dormant were no longer dormant. They were cautious, curious, alert. Rodney's voice came over the comm. We have a situation. And by situation, I mean the city just opened something it really should not have opened without asking first. Arthur sighed. I will come. Deep within Atlantis, beyond sealed corridors and inactive transport hubs, a chamber long thought inert was now fully illuminated. Water flowed through transparent conduits along the walls, carrying not coolant, but life signatures. Taylor stood at the threshold, visibly affected. This place feels old, Rodney nodded. Older than the city, pre-evacuation era, possibly pre-war. Arthur stepped inside and stopped. At the chamber's center hovered a massive crystalline lattice suspended in water and light. Within it, faint silhouettes moved, shapes that were not fully physical nor fully energy. Guardians. Arthur felt them before he understood them. They turned toward him. Recognition surged through the chamber. Arthur's vision swam as memories that were not his pressed against his mind. Oceans seeded with life, worlds sculpted for balance, a covenant between civilization and the deep. Rodney swallowed. Those are not people. Arthur nodded slowly. They are not meant to be. One of the figures extended a limb of light towards him, not touching, communicating. Arthur breathed in sharply. They were meant to guide Atlantis, to anchor it to the living systems of the planet, to ensure the city never forgot it was a guest, not a ruler. Shepard frowned. What happened to them? Arthur's voice was quiet. They were abandoned when the war demanded weapons instead of wisdom. The Guardians pulsed faintly. They had waited for someone who could hear them. The city lights flared throughout Atlantis. Rodney looked at his scanner in disbelief. They are integrating. The city is rerouting core functions through this chamber. Arthur closed his eyes. Atlantis is no longer only a fortress. It is becoming a steward again. Ronan crossed his arms. Does that mean more ocean monsters? Arthur opened one eye. Only if necessary. Ronan grunted. Great. An alarm cut through the moment. Shepard straightened. That sounds important. Rodney checked the display. Wraith activity. Multiple hives changing course. But that is not the problem. Arthur turned. What is? Rodney's voice dropped. Something else just activated in the deep. Ancient, autonomous, and it does not recognize you. The Guardians reacted immediately. The lattice flared as one unified signal rippled outward. Arthur felt it. A counter-Guardian, a failsafe. Arthur's jaw tightened. They built a weapon to kill what I am. Shepard stared. That seems excessive. Arthur shook his head. It was not built for me. It was built for anything that could command the sea without being ancient. Ronan smirked. So basically, you trip the alarm that says kill the god. Arthur did not argue. Below Atlantis, the ocean darkened unnaturally. Something vast began to rise. Not alive, not dead. Constructed, Rodney whispered. That thing has more mass than a hive ship. Arthur placed his hand on the wall. The sea trembled. The counter-guardian emerged from the abyss like a moving mountain. Its body was a fusion of living metal and energy conduits, shaped like a leviathan forged by engineers who believed even gods needed limits. It turned toward Atlantis, and then toward Arthur. Arthur straightened. This is my fault, Weir's voice came through the chamber comm. You are not facing it alone. Arthur smiled faintly. Good, because it was never meant to be faced alone. The counter-guardian surged forward, displacing entire currents as it accelerated. Ancient weapons charged along its spine, targeting solutions locking onto the city. Atlantis raised its shields. Arthur stepped forward. No! He reached out to the Guardians. Help me, the Guardians responded. Not with power, with restraint. They dampened his resonance, grounding him, forcing him to remain connected to those around him. Arthur felt the weight of the city, of the people, of the ocean, not as a weapon, but as a shared responsibility. The counter-guardian fired. The blast struck Arthur mid-air. He did not deflect it. He absorbed it. The impact hurled him backward, slamming him into the shield dome. Pain flared through him like fire and ice combined. Ronan swore loudly. Arthur fell, not into the sea, Into the city. Shepard ran. Arthur hit the floor hard, armor cracked, breath driven from his lungs. For the first time since arriving, he bled. The city shuddered. The Guardians pulsed urgently. Arthur forced himself up, grimacing. "So," he muttered, "they finally built something that hurts." Shepard knelt beside him. "You good?" Arthur wiped blood from his mouth. "No, but I am still standing." The counter-guardian repositioned, preparing a second strike. Arthur looked at the Guardians. "You were wrong to abandon them," he said softly, "and wrong to think control was the answer." The Guardians flared brighter. Arthur turned to Shepard. "Tell Rodney to reroute the shield harmonics through the lattice. Match the city's frequency to the ocean itself." Shepard blinked. "That sounds insane." Arthur nodded. "Yes, but it will confuse it." The counter-guardian hesitated as Atlantis' shield shifted. The city no longer presented as a target, but as part of the environment. Arthur rose unsteadily. "I will not fight it as a god." He lifted Mjolnir. "I will fight it as a guardian." He leapt, straight toward the Leviathan. Arthur hit the water like a falling star. The ocean did not cushion him. It embraced him. Currents surged instinctively, wrapping around his battered form and stabilizing his descent as he plunged toward the counter-guardian. Pain radiated through his chest where the blast had struck. His armor was fractured along the left pauldron, ancient metal warped by technology meant to humble gods. Good, Arthur thought, grimly. That meant it took me seriously. The counter-guardian adjusted its trajectory, colossal body angling to intercept. Its eyes flared with cold, analytical light as weapons arrays recalibrated. Arthur could feel it thinking, not conscious, not alive, but aware. A machine built with one singular philosophy: nothing should command the sea. Arthur tightened his grip on the trident. Then I am exactly what it was built to stop. The Leviathan fired again. Arthur did not dodge. He plunged straight into the beam. The water screamed. Energy tore through the ocean in a blinding column, boiling entire sections into vapor. Arthur forced himself forward, muscles screaming as he pushed against the blast, every inch of progress paid for in pain. Atlantis watched. The city sensors tracked the engagement in silence, data flooding consoles as Rodney stared, pale and rigid. "He is insane," Rodney whispered. "That thing just hit him with enough power to crack a continent." Shepard did not look away. "He knows." Arthur broke through the beam. He struck the counter-guardian's armored hide with the trident, driving its prongs into a seam between plates. The impact sent a resonant shock through both of them, rippling outward like a bell struck in the deep. The Guardian reacted instantly, whipping its massive tail and slamming Arthur into the seabed. Stone shattered. Arthur groaned, forcing himself upright as sediment engulfed him. The Guardian loomed overhead, preparing to finish it. Arthur reached out, not with force, with understanding. "I am not your enemy," he projected. Voice carried not through sound, but through pressure and intent. "You were built to protect balance. So was I." The Guardian paused, just for a fraction of a second. Enough. Arthur surged upward, channeling everything the Guardians had given him. Not raw power, but alignment. His resonance synchronized with Atlantis, with the lattice, with the living ocean itself. For the first time, the counter-guardian hesitated not because of damage, but confusion. Rodney gasped. "It is losing target lock." Shepard leaned forward. "How?" Taylor answered softly. "It cannot distinguish him from the sea anymore." Arthur moved, not as a warrior, as a current. He flowed around the Guardian, striking not to destroy, but to disrupt. Each blow targeted nodes of control, not weapons. Ancient failsafes built into the machine flared and shut down, one by one. The Guardian roared, not in anger, in alarm. It attempted to disengage, propulsion systems firing to retreat into the abyss. Arthur would not let it. He planted himself against its core housing and drove the trident inward, not to pierce, to connect. The trident flared with ancient light, runes igniting along its shaft as it interfaced with the Guardian's control matrix. Data and memory flooded Arthur's mind. The creation of the failsafe, the fear that birthed it. Ancients watching worlds drown under unchecked power, beings who bent oceans and atmospheres to their will, guardians who forgot restraint. Arthur gritted his teeth. "You were right to fear that," he said through clenched teeth. "But you were wrong to believe control was the answer." He opened himself fully, to Atlantis, to the Guardians, to the sea. The counter-Guardian systems overloaded, not violently, but quietly. Control hierarchies unraveled, command loops collapsing into dormancy. The massive construct went still. Its lights dimmed, its weapons powered down. Arthur released the trident and drifted backward, exhausted beyond measure. The ocean held him aloft. Atlantis exhaled. Rodney collapsed into a chair. It powered down, not destroyed, just stopped. Shepard let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Arthur floated there for several seconds, unmoving. Ronan clenched his fists. He better not be dead. Arthur stirred. He coughed, water dispersing harmlessly as he pushed himself upright. "I am still here," he said weakly. Shepard laughed, relief breaking through tension. "Show off." The city initiated retrieval protocols automatically. Energy fields enveloped Arthur and carried him gently upward through water and stone into Atlantis's heart. He collapsed onto the floor of the control chamber, armor scorched and cracked, hair drifting like he was still underwater. Rodney rushed forward. "Do not move, or breathe, or think. Actually, you can think. Just do not die." Arthur smiled faintly. "You worry too much." Weir knelt beside him. "You stopped an ancient failsafe designed to kill beings like you." Arthur closed his eyes. "No, I taught it to rest." The Guardians pulsed softly in the chamber, their light steady and calm. Taylor placed a hand over her heart. "They accept you." Arthur opened one eye. "They accept all of us." An alert chimed. Shepard straightened. "Wraith fleet status." Rodney checked the display. "They are retreating, all of them. Every hive reversed course the moment the counter-Guardian shut down." Arthur exhaled slowly. They felt it, the balance shift. Weir looked at him intently. "You are changing the rules of this galaxy." Arthur sat up with effort. "The rules were always wrong." Ronan snorted. "I like the new ones." Arthur met his gaze, amused. "So do I." Outside Atlantis, the ocean settled into a deep, resonant calm. Life resumed its rhythms. Currents adjusted, no longer defensive, but watchful. Far away, in the darkness between stars, ancient enemies reconsidered strategies that had endured for millennia. Atlantis was no longer a relic. It was awake, and it had found its guardian. Arthur woke to the sound of water, not rushing, not turbulent, a slow, rhythmic movement like breathing. He opened his eyes and found himself in a chamber unlike any he had seen before in Atlantis. The walls were smooth and curved, layered with translucent crystal that refracted light into soft, aquatic hues. Thin streams of water flowed through channels in the walls, not as pipes or coolant, but as part of the room itself. A healing chamber, ancient. He sat up slowly. Pain answered, but it was distant now, muted, already receding. His armor had been removed and repaired, reassembled around him with seamless precision. The trident rested nearby, suspended in a gentle field of light. The city had taken care of him. That realization settled heavy in his chest. "You are awake." Arthur turned. Elizabeth Weir stood at the entrance, hands clasped, expression measured, but unmistakably relieved. "I was beginning to think the city might keep you for itself," she said. Arthur exhaled. It tried. She stepped closer. "How do you feel?" Arthur considered the question honestly. Grounded, tired, different. Weir nodded. "That tracks." Rodney's voice echoed from the corridor before his body followed. "Oh, good, you are conscious. That saves me from having to explain to Earth how we lost a god because we forgot to plug him in." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "I am not a device," Rodney waved dismissively. "Everything is a device if you look at it long enough." Shepard appeared behind him, arms crossed. "You scared the hell out of everyone." Arthur smiled, faintly. "That also tracks." Shepard stepped inside. "You shut down an ancient kill construct, scared off the Wraith, and convinced Atlantis to rewrite its own operating philosophy. No pressure, but you just became the most strategically important being in this galaxy." Arthur swung his legs off the platform. "Then I should probably stop pretending I am a visitor." Weir watched him carefully. "What are you saying?" Arthur stood. "I cannot return to my world. Not yet, maybe not ever. And this city, this ocean, these people are now part of my responsibility." Rodney frowned. "Responsibility is a strong word." Arthur met his gaze. "So is power." A silence followed. Then Ronan's voice cut in from the doorway. "So does this mean you are moving in?" Arthur looked at him. "Is that an invitation?" Ronan smirked. "Just want to know if I need to worry about you flooding my quarters." Arthur laughed. "Only if you deserve it." The city hummed softly, almost amused. Taylor stepped forward. "The people feel it," she said. "Even those who do not understand the science. They feel safer. The ocean feels attentive." Arthur nodded. "It is listening again." Weir folded her arms. "That raises a concern. If the people begin to see you as a protector, or worse, a ruler." Arthur shook his head immediately. "No, that path ends badly. I will not be their god." Shepard tilted his head. "But you are okay being their shield." Arthur met his gaze. "Shields do not demand worship. They stand between danger and those who cannot fight it," Rodney muttered. "Great. A philosophical god. That is new." Another alert chimed. Rodney checked his tablet. Long-range sensors. Not Wraith. Arthur felt it before the words finished. Something old. Something curious. Something that did not flee. "What is it?" Shepard asked. Rodney swallowed. "An ancient vessel. Deep space. No active weapons. It is broadcasting a passive signal." Arthur closed his eyes. They felt the shift. Weir's voice was quiet. The ancients who left, or the ones who stayed behind. Arthur opened his eyes. Or the ones who have been watching. The city's central chamber filled with light as the projection activated. Star maps unfolded, highlighting a slow, deliberate trajectory toward Atlantis. Shepard crossed his arms. "Friendly." Rodney grimaced. "Define friendly." Arthur stepped forward. "They want to see what woke the city." Ronan cracked his neck. "Guess we are about to have company." The vessel arrived hours later, dropping out of hyperspace with elegance rather than force. Its design was unmistakably ancient, but altered, less militarized, more organic. Atlantis did not raise shields, it welcomed it. Arthur stood on the balcony overlooking the ocean as the ship descended, guided not by docking clamps, but by currents that parted naturally. The ancients emerged, not ascended, not holograms, living. They were taller than humans, eyes luminous with knowledge and restraint rather than arrogance. Their leader stepped forward, gaze fixed not on Weir, not on Shepard, but on Arthur. "So, the resonance has a face now," the ancient said. Arthur inclined his head respectfully. "And the past still has a voice." The ancient studied him. "You are not of us," Arthur nodded, "but you built places meant for beings like me." A flicker of something like regret crossed the ancient's face. "We forgot that," Rodney whispered. "I hate it when he talks like that, and they agree." The ancient turned to Weir. "Your city has changed." Weir met their gaze steadily. It remembered what it was built to be. The ancient looked back at Arthur. "And you reminded it." Arthur's voice was calm. "You built weapons because you were afraid. You abandoned guardians because they challenged your control. You fled when balance demanded patience instead of dominance." The ancient did not argue. "We failed." Arthur stepped closer. "Then help us fix it." Silence stretched. Then the ancient nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why the sea chose you." Ronan leaned toward Shepard. "I still do not get why the ocean picked him." Arthur glanced back. "It did not pick me." He paused. "It picked all of us." The ancient vessel powered down its engines. Atlantis hummed in response. The city, the ocean, and its people stood on the edge of something new. Not an empire, not a war, a stewardship. And for the first time in a long while, the future did not feel like a countdown. It felt like a beginning. The ancient delegation did not request quarters. They did not need them. Instead, they stood within Atlantis as if the city itself were familiar ground, moving through corridors with the quiet confidence of those who remembered every turn, every junction, every chamber long before it had been buried beneath an alien ocean. Arthur walked beside them, not leading, not following, matching pace. The lead ancient spoke without turning. "You are uncomfortable," Arthur did not deny it. "You left this city to drown." The ancient paused. "We left it to survive." Arthur stopped walking. "Those are not the same thing." The ancient turned then, eyes steady. "We believed survival meant withdrawal, that our presence would only escalate the war, that Atlantis would become a target too valuable to protect." Arthur's voice was low. "So you abandoned those who could not leave?" The ancient's expression flickered. "Yes." Silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of millennia. Shepard watched from several paces back, speaking quietly to Rodney. "I do not like how calm they are." Rodney nodded. "That is how you know they are dangerous." Taylor moved closer to Arthur. "They feel regret, genuine regret." Arthur nodded. "Regret is meaningless without action." They reached a vast observation chamber overlooking the ocean floor. Light from bioluminescent life painted shifting patterns across the walls. Atlantis pulsed softly, attentive to every word spoken within its heart. The ancient gestured outward. This planet was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where technology and life evolved together, where oceans were not conquered, but partnered. Arthur's jaw tightened. "And then you built weapons." The ancient's shoulders lowered slightly. "Yes." Ronan snorted from behind. "Funny how that keeps happening." The ancient looked at him without offense. "Fear accelerates invention. Wisdom slows it." Arthur turned fully to face them. Then why return now? The ancient met his gaze. Because something has changed. Because you exist. Arthur felt the weight of that statement press against him. I am not your solution. No, the ancient agreed. You are our reminder, Rodney whispered loudly. I do not like being reminded by someone who can weaponize oceans. Arthur shot him a look. The ancient continued. You did what we could not. You integrated without dominating. You used power without demanding submission. The city responded because it recognized restraint. Arthur exhaled slowly. Restraint learned through failure. The ancient inclined their head. As was ours, Weir stepped forward. If you are here to help, then we need clarity. The Wraith are retreating, but they will adapt. They always do. The ancient nodded. We have observed them for centuries. Their strength is not their ships or their numbers. It is their ability to learn fearlessly. Arthur's eyes narrowed. Then we must teach them something new. The ancient smiled, faintly. Precisely. Atlantis' central display activated, showing a network of worlds previously marked as lost. Ancient facilities long dormant flickered to life across the map. Rodney's breath caught. Those are oceanic worlds, dozens of them. Arthur felt it immediately. They are waking. The ancient spoke. Atlantis was never meant to stand alone. It was the keystone of a network, each world a node, each ocean a voice. Arthur closed his eyes. A planetary chorus. Ronan frowned. That sounds bad. Arthur opened his eyes. It sounds necessary, the ancient continued. We propose restoration, not militarization, reawakening guardians, repairing balance systems, turning the galaxy itself into something the Wraith cannot consume without consequence. Shepard crossed his arms. You want to make the galaxy fight back. The ancient nodded, life defending itself. Arthur stepped forward. And you want me to be the catalyst. The ancient did not deny it. Arthur laughed softly. You always did love intermediaries. Rodney groaned. Please tell me this does not involve him becoming a living router for ancient planetary defense grids. Arthur glanced at him. It might. Rodney's face fell. I hate this timeline. The city lights dimmed slightly, then stabilized. Atlantis was listening closely. Arthur placed his hand against the crystalline wall. I will not command these worlds, the ancient answered immediately. Nor should you, Arthur continued. I will not rule them, speak for them, or decide their fate. The ancient nodded. Agreed. Arthur turned back. Then I will stand between them and extinction. I will help them remember how to protect themselves. A pause. Then the ancient inclined their head deeply. That is all we ask. Ronan leaned toward Shepard. I'm starting to think this is how religions start, Shepard muttered back. Let us just make sure it ends better than most. An alert chimed softly. Rodney checked the data. Wraith movement. They are regrouping near a dead zone. No planets, no resources. Arthur frowned. They are planning something desperate. The ancient spoke quietly. They have always been most dangerous when cornered. Arthur nodded. Then we move first. Weir looked at him sharply. Move how? Arthur turned to the display, highlighting the deepest trench beneath Atlantis. We show them that the ocean is not just a battlefield. It is a boundary. He looked back at the ancient. Can you help me speak to it? The ancient smiled. We never forgot how. Below the city, the sea stirred once more. Not in anger, not in fear, in preparation. Far away, in the darkness between stars, Wraith queens felt something new seep into the void. Not hunger, not prey, resistance. The ocean beneath Atlantis changed its rhythm. It was subtle at first, a low-frequency shift that only Arthur and the ancients noticed. Currents aligned in patterns that were not random. Thermal layers reorganized themselves with deliberate symmetry, and deep sea life altered migratory paths as if responding to a call they did not consciously understand. Arthur stood at the edge of the primary ocean interface chamber, flanked by the ancient delegation. Water flowed upward in suspended columns around them, forming a living map of the planet below. "This is not force," Arthur said, quietly. "It is coordination." The lead ancient nodded. "The sea remembers how to move as one." Rodney hovered behind them, scanning the impossible hydrodynamics with a mixture of awe and dread. "I am watching continental-scale water masses synchronize without generating destructive shear. That should not be possible." Arthur glanced back. "It is when you stop fighting yourself." Ronan crossed his arms. "So the plan is to weaponize the ocean without calling it a weapon." Arthur smiled, faintly. "Exactly." Shepard looked at the projection. "What does that actually do to the Wraith?" the ancient answered. "It denies them concealment. Their ships rely on predictable pressure gradients to mask approach. When the sea stops behaving predictably, they are exposed," Arthur added, "and they will feel watched." As if summoned by his words, long-range sensors chimed again. Rodney's voice tightened. "They are moving, all of them. Every hive in the sector is converging." Arthur inhaled slowly. They sensed the boundary forming. Taylor closed her eyes briefly. Fear spreads quickly through their kind. Arthur nodded. "So does hunger." The ancient vessel repositioned itself in orbit, projecting harmonic signals into the planetary crust and oceanic mantle alike. Atlantis echoed the signal, amplifying it through its restored lattice network. The ocean answered. A wave formed far below the city. Not a tsunami, not a surge. A wall of compressed pressure that wrapped the planet like an unseen shield. Shepard stared. "That is not a shield," Arthur corrected him. "It is a warning." The first Wraith hive ship crossed the boundary. Instantly, its sensors screamed. Pressure gradients twisted violently around it, currents pulling in conflicting directions. Organic systems strained to compensate as internal structures buckled. The hive halted, then began to retreat. Rodney's jaw dropped. It just turned around. Arthur's eyes remained fixed on the display. They understand territory. More hives approached. Some tested the boundary. Others circled, probing for weaknesses. None crossed fully. The lead ancient spoke softly. "They have never encountered a living environment that resists them." Arthur's voice hardened. "Then they will learn." A sudden spike flashed on the display. Rodney's voice rose. "They are charging weapons, long range. They are going to bombard the ocean." Arthur closed his eyes. That would be a mistake. The Wraith fired. Energy lances tore through space, slamming into the ocean's surface with catastrophic force. Water vaporized in towering plumes. Shock waves rippled across the planet. For a moment, it seemed as though the sea might break. Then it absorbed the impact. The pressure wall flexed, redistributed the energy, and dissipated it harmlessly into thermal currents. Arthur opened his eyes. The sea does not break easily. The ancient inclined their head. Nor should it. One hive ship pushed forward again, more aggressively this time. Its commander screamed through the neural chorus, overriding instinct with desperation. It crossed the boundary. The sea responded. Currents inverted. Pressure collapsed inward. The hive's organic hull twisted grotesquely as forces it had never evolved to withstand crushed it from all sides. The ship imploded silently, not exploded, crushed. The remaining hives pulled back instantly. Ronan let out a low whistle. "That sends a message." Arthur nodded. "They will not come this way again." Shepard looked uneasy. "So what happens now?" Arthur did not answer immediately. He turned to the Ancient. "They will adapt. They always do." The Ancient nodded. "Yes, but adaptation requires time." Arthur faced the display again. "Then we use that time to free the world still chained to them." Rodney blinked. "Oh, good. We are doing a galaxy-wide liberation campaign now." Arthur glanced at him. "You are welcome to opt out." Rodney sighed. "I never do." The Ancient spoke. "Atlantis was never meant to fight alone. We will guide restoration of the other oceanic nodes. Each one weakens the Wraith's reach." Arthur nodded. "And each one gives life a voice again." Weir stepped forward. "What about the people? Those who will see this and believe you are something more than you claim." Arthur's expression softened. "Then I will remind them that I bleed, that I fall, that I need allies, that I am not above them." Taylor smiled faintly. "You already do." Arthur felt the city hum in agreement. The boundary stabilized, not rigid, but adaptive. A living frontier that expanded and contracted with the sea's own rhythms. Across the galaxy, Wraith Queens reevaluated ancient strategies. Feeding grounds vanished. Safe passages became death traps. The ocean itself had become hostile to their kind. And worse, it was learning. Arthur stood at the heart of Atlantis, surrounded by mortals, ancients, and a city that had remembered its purpose. This was not victory. It was momentum. Momentum brought consequences. Atlantis felt it first, not as an alarm or a warning, but as a subtle resistance, a drag in the city's systems that had not existed before. Power flows hesitated. Environmental harmonics required constant adjustment. The ocean was still responding, but something beneath that response had changed. Arthur sensed it immediately. He stood at the city's edge, eyes closed, trident grounded against the stone, listening to the sea as carefully as one listened to a wounded friend. "The ocean is tired," he said quietly. Shepard frowned. "Tired how?" Arthur opened his eyes. Holding a boundary like this requires effort, not pain, strain. Rodney appeared behind them, tablet already glowing with data. He is not wrong. Thermal redistribution across the planetary ocean is spiking. Nothing catastrophic, but if sustained indefinitely, it will disrupt long-term climate stability. Arthur nodded. "Balance cannot be enforced forever." Shepard exhaled. "So what? We just turn it off and hope the Wraith do not notice." Arthur shook his head. "No, we change the pattern." Inside the city, the ancient delegation had withdrawn into deep consultation with Atlantis's core systems. The Guardian's lattice glowed brighter than before, threads of light weaving between city and sea. Weir joined Arthur. "You are thinking several steps ahead." Arthur smiled faintly. "The sea always does." Rodney raised an eyebrow. "That sentence continues to make me uncomfortable." Arthur turned to him. "The boundary was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to force choice." "Choice for who?" Ronan asked, approaching with his usual lack of subtlety. Arthur met his gaze. "For the Wraith," silence followed. Ronan snorted. "They do not choose, they feed." Arthur nodded. "They believe that." The Ancient spoke from behind them. "But belief is not destiny." They stepped forward, projecting a new set of data onto the display. Not worlds, not fleets, Wraith biology. Rodney's eyes widened. "You have been studying them For thousands of years, the ancient replied. Their hunger is not infinite. It is engineered, reinforced by their queens through neural control. Arthur leaned forward. Which means it can be disrupted. The ancient nodded. Not eliminated. Altered. Shepard crossed his arms. You are talking about rewriting the Wraith. The ancient's expression was careful. We are talking about removing the absolute nature of their hunger. Arthur straightened. No genocide. The ancient inclined their head. We learned that lesson. Rodney rubbed his face. Okay, just to be clear, the plan is to alter an entire species that feeds on sentient life, so they do not have to anymore. Arthur glanced at him. When you say it like that, it sounds ambitious. Ronan grinned. I like ambitious. Taylor looked thoughtful. If they are freed from hunger, they will no longer need to conquer. Arthur nodded. And if some refuse, Shepard answered flatly, then they choose extinction. Arthur did not argue. The city pulsed softly, as if acknowledging the gravity of the decision. Rodney sighed. You know Earth ethics committees would have a stroke over this. Arthur smiled. Good thing they are not here, the ancient continued. The boundary forced the Wraith to concentrate, to gather. Queens cannot exert control effectively across scattered fleets. Arthur's eyes narrowed. They are consolidating. Yes, the ancient said, near a system with no oceans. Rodney frowned. That is a trap, Arthur nodded. For both of us. Ronan cracked his knuckles. So where do I point my gun? Arthur met his gaze. You will not need it, not at first. The plan unfolded not as a battle, but as a convergence. Atlantis would withdraw the boundary slowly, not collapsing it, but reshaping it into channels that guided Wraith fleets toward the dead system. A place with no planetary life to endanger, no oceans to strain. The Guardians would carry the resonance. Arthur would carry the message. The Wraith arrived in force. Hives clustered together like a swarm of wounded predators, their commanders furious, confused, desperate. They had lost feeding grounds, lost certainty, lost control. Arthur stepped forward onto the open platform at Atlantis' edge as the city rose slightly from the sea, presenting itself openly. Shepard stared. You are standing outside the shield. Arthur nodded. They need to see me, Rodney's voice cracked. That makes you target number 1. Arthur smiled faintly. Good. He lifted the trident. The sea did not surge. It stilled. Arthur projected his presence outward, not as dominance, but as undeniable reality. The Guardians amplified it, carrying the signal through water, space, and biology. He spoke, not in words, in sensation, the absence of hunger, the memory of oceans unpoisoned by fear, the possibility of existing without endless consumption. The Wraith Queen screamed, not in pain, in resistance. They fired. Arthur did not flinch. The energy blasts struck an invisible barrier formed not by shields, but by pressure and resonance. The ocean itself bent reality around him. The ancient watched in silence. This was the moment. Arthur focused. He reached for the queens, not to command, but to unbind. Hunger is not who you are, he projected. It is what was done to you. Some resisted violently. Some broke. One hive ship shuddered, then another. Internal conflict erupted across the fleet as neural control fractured. Drones faltered. Queens shrieked as their absolute authority slipped. Ronan stared in awe. They are fighting themselves, Shepard whispered. He is giving them a choice. Arthur staggered as the effort took its toll. Blood trickled from his nose. His grip tightened on the trident as the Guardians reinforced him, grounding his resonance so it did not tear him apart. Choose, Arthur pressed. or remain what you are. A hive ship powered down its weapons. Then another, not all. Several hives broke formation, fleeing into hyperspace, their queens howling defiance. Arthur let them go. The rest remained, changed. The ocean exhaled. Arthur collapsed to one knee. Shepard ran. The city caught Arthur before he hit the deck, energy fields easing him back onto solid ground. Rodney stared at the data. This is impossible. They are metabolizing differently. Their energy consumption has dropped. The ancient spoke softly. Not cured, but free. Arthur laughed weakly. That is all anyone deserves. The Wraith fleet withdrew, not as conquerors, not as prey, but as something uncertain, for the first time in their existence. Arthur lay back against the stone, exhausted beyond measure. "So," he muttered, "who wants to tell me how badly I broke the galaxy?" Ronan grinned. "You broke it in the good way." Atlantis hummed, the sea rested, and the future, fragile and dangerous, stretched open. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no triumphal signals, no sudden peace, no sense of finality. What followed Arthur's confrontation with the Wraith was quieter and far more dangerous. Uncertainty. Atlantis felt it ripple outward in delayed waves. Worlds that had lived under the shadow of the Wraith for generations did not immediately believe the reports. Entire civilizations had been shaped by fear. Fear did not vanish because one battle ended differently. Arthur understood that. He stood in the city's central spire days later, fully healed but visibly changed. Not weaker, sharper, as if something inside him had settled into place and would never move again. Shepard watched him from a distance. "You are quieter," he said. Arthur smiled faintly. "The ocean gets that way after a storm." Rodney leaned against a console, arms folded. The data does not lie. Wraith incursions have dropped by 70% across the sector. Feeding raids are sporadic and disorganized. The ones you changed are struggling to redefine themselves. Arthur nodded. They were never meant to exist as they did. Taylor stepped closer. "Some worlds have begun to resist openly," she said. "Not with weapons, with refusal. The Wraith retreat when denied fear." Arthur closed his eyes briefly. Good. The ancient delegation remained in Atlantis, though they kept to themselves more than before. They observed, advised, but did not command. They had learned finally that presence alone could distort balance. One of them approached Arthur now. "You did something we believed impossible." Arthur looked at them. "I reminded you of something you chose to forget." The ancient inclined their head. "Yes." A pause. Then they spoke again. "The galaxy will now change faster than it ever has." Arthur nodded. "Change always accelerates after restraint is removed." Ronan entered, expression unusually serious. "There is something you should see." They moved to a projection chamber where star maps glowed softly. Rodney brought up new data. "This is not Wraith activity," he said. "This is worse." Arthur felt it before the explanation finished. Movement in the deep void. Not ships, not hyperspace signatures. Something massive, ancient, awake. The ancient stiffened. "That should not be possible." Arthur met their gaze. "You are not the only ones who listen to the sea." The projection shifted, revealing a region of space previously marked inert. Now it pulsed faintly, like a heart beginning to beat. Rodney swallowed. That region contains no stars, no planets, just old gravitational anomalies. Arthur's voice was quiet. "Graves," the ancient whispered. "The Devourers." Ronan frowned. "I do not like that name." Arthur did not look away from the display. They predate the Wraith, predate even the ancients. They consume not life, but equilibrium. They awaken when balance shifts too quickly. Shepard stared. So by fixing one problem, we woke another. Arthur nodded. Yes. Rodney exhaled sharply. I hate cosmic ecology, the ancient spoke. We buried them by stabilizing the galaxy, by freezing evolution in place. Arthur turned. And when you fled, the balance rotted. The ancient did not argue. The devourers had not moved yet, but the resonance was unmistakable. Something vast was stirring, drawn by the collapse of old patterns and the birth of new ones. Taylor spoke softly. They are drawn to transition. Arthur nodded. To uncertainty. Weir joined them, face grave. Then what do we do? Arthur took a long breath. We do not fight them. Ronan blinked. You are kidding. Arthur shook his head. They cannot be destroyed, only fed. Rodney's eyes widened. No. We are not feeding galaxy-eating horrors. Arthur met his gaze calmly. They feed on imbalance, on unresolved change, on systems pulled too far in one direction. The ancient's eyes widened in understanding. You mean? Arthur nodded. We finished what we started. He gestured to the map. The Wraith, the ancients, the younger races, all of us. We stopped forcing outcomes. We stopped trying to control evolution. Shepard frowned. That sounds like letting go. Arthur smiled faintly. Exactly. Atlantis hummed softly, as if uneasy with the concept. Arthur placed his hand against the wall. You were never meant to be a throne. The city dimmed slightly. You were meant to be a bridge. The Devourer's resonance intensified briefly, then stabilized. Rodney stared. It is responding. Arthur nodded. They sensed the shift. The ancient asked quietly, and if we fail? Arthur met their gaze. Then the galaxy learns what happens when balance is ignored. Silence fell. Outside, the ocean was calm. Too calm. Arthur looked out across it, trident resting at his side. This was not the end of a war. It was the beginning of responsibility. Responsibility was heavier than any crown Arthur had ever worn. It pressed on him not as obligation, but as awareness. Every choice now rippled outward, not just through people or planets, but through systems older than memory. The ocean felt it. Atlantis felt it. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Arthur stood in the quiet of the city's upper spire, alone, listening. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, the sea did not answer immediately. Not silence, consideration. That unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. You are not sleeping again, Shepard said from behind him. Arthur smiled faintly. I am listening. Shepard joined him at the railing. Rodney says the Devourers are stabilizing, not retreating, not advancing, just watching. Arthur nodded. They are waiting to see if we mean what we started. Shepard frowned. And if we do not? Arthur looked out across the water. Then they will finish it for us. Inside Atlantis, preparations were underway, not for war, but for release. Ancient systems that had governed worlds too tightly were being dismantled, piece by piece. Control nodes deactivated, safeguards loosened, planetary defense grids reconfigured from domination to deterrence. Rodney hated every second of it. You know, he said, pacing angrily through the control room, civilizations collapse when you remove centralized control. Chaos is not a phase, it is a lifestyle. Arthur met his gaze calmly. So is stagnation. Rodney threw up his hands. There has to be a middle ground between iron control and philosophical anarchy. Arthur nodded. That middle ground is trust. Ronan snorted. People get killed when you trust too much. Arthur looked at him. And when you trust too little? Ronan did not argue. The ancient delegation observed quietly as Atlantis rewrote itself. Systems once rigid became adaptive. Command hierarchies flattened. The city stopped deciding what was best for the galaxy and began responding to what it became. One of the ancients approached Arthur privately. "You are dismantling the very mechanisms that made Atlantis powerful." Arthur met their gaze. "No, I am dismantling the ones that made you afraid." The ancient closed their eyes briefly. "We thought fear was wisdom." Arthur shook his head. "Fear is memory without perspective." Beyond Atlantis, the galaxy reacted. Some worlds thrived immediately, freed from ancient constraints they had never known existed. Others faltered, struggling without invisible hands guiding outcomes. Arthur watched it all. He did not intervene. That was the hardest part. The Devourers stirred again, not closer, clearer. Rodney brought the data himself this time, voice subdued. Their resonance is smoothing out, like turbulence fading after a storm. Arthur nodded. "They are feeding less." Shepard stared at the display. "Because the galaxy is hurting less." Arthur met his gaze. "Because it is choosing again." A sudden alert flashed. Not hostile, a request. Rodney blinked. "That is, a Wraith signal." The room went still. Arthur felt it instantly. Not hunger, fear. "Open the channel," Arthur said. Shepard hesitated, then nodded. The holographic projection shimmered to life, revealing a Wraith queen. She looked diminished somehow, her presence less overwhelming, her neural chorus fractured. "We do not understand what we are becoming," she said. Her voice lacked its former certainty. Arthur stepped forward. "Neither do we. You took our certainty," the queen hissed. Arthur nodded. "Yes." A pause. Then she spoke again, quieter. "We do not wish to die." Arthur's voice was steady. "Then learn to live." The queen recoiled slightly. "That path is unknown." Arthur inclined his head. "So was mine." Silence stretched. Then the queen bowed her head. "We will withdraw further. We will not feed on sentient worlds." Arthur felt the Devourer's ease. "Do not mistake restraint for forgiveness," Arthur said. The queen met his gaze. "We would never dare." The signal cut. Ronan exhaled. "I never thought I would see that." Arthur turned away. "Neither did I." Atlantis pulsed softly, almost relieved. The ancient approached Arthur once more. "You are unmaking our legacy." Arthur shook his head. "I am finishing it." He looked out across the sea. Power fades, control crumbles, only balance endures. Far beyond Pegasus, the Devourers settled deeper into dormancy, their hunger sated not by destruction, but by resolution. For the first time in ages, the galaxy was not being steered. It was being allowed to move. And that frightened everyone, which meant it was working. Fear did not vanish. It adapted. As control loosened across the galaxy, new uncertainties took root. Old enemies hesitated. Old allies questioned themselves. Worlds that had relied on invisible safeguards began to realize how fragile self-determination could be. Atlantis felt heavier, not in mass, in expectation. Arthur sensed it everywhere he went, in the way people watched him when they thought he was not looking, in the pauses before questions, in the hope that he would decide for them. That hope frightened him more than the Devourers ever had. He stood in the city's central plaza, a place once reserved for command briefings and emergency alerts. Now it was open, quiet, alive with the hum of people simply existing within Atlantis rather than operating it. Taylor joined him. "They look to you," she said gently. Arthur nodded. "I know." Taylor studied his face. And you do not want them to. Arthur exhaled slowly. Dependence is just another form of control. Rodney approached, unusually subdued. The city finished its recalibration. It no longer prioritizes command efficiency. It prioritizes environmental feedback. That sentence still makes my teeth itch. Arthur smiled faintly. It means Atlantis will not choose for you anymore. Rodney grimaced. I liked it better when it made choices I could blame. An alert chimed softly. Not a threat, a presence. The ancient delegation gathered near the central projection as a new signal resolved. Not hyperspace, not a vessel, a convergence. Arthur felt it like a pressure change before a storm. They are here, he said. Shepard stiffened. Who? Arthur did not answer immediately. Others. The projection unfolded into abstract geometries that hurt to look at directly. Not ships, not beings, perspectives. Rodney swallowed. Those readings do not correspond to any known physics. The ancient's face had gone pale. They should not be aware of us. Arthur's jaw tightened. They were always aware. They simply did not care. The presence pressed closer, not physically, but conceptually. Atlantis' systems struggled to interpret it, alarms flickering uncertainly before shutting down. Arthur stepped forward. They are not hostile. Ronan raised an eyebrow. That is not comforting. Arthur shook his head. They are observers. The presence resolved into a single sensation. Assessment. Arthur closed his eyes. They are evaluating whether this galaxy remains viable. Shepard stared. Viable for what? Arthur opened his eyes. Existence, the ancient whispered. The conservators. Rodney blinked. I hate that name already. Arthur spoke without turning. They are older than the Devourers. They do not consume imbalance. They reset it. Silence fell like a weight. Weir spoke carefully. Reset how? Arthur met her gaze. Extinction-level events. Stellar collapses. Cultural erasure. A clean slate. Ronan growled. So basically gods with an eraser. Arthur nodded. Yes. The present shifted. Arthur felt a question, not in words, in probability. Is this galaxy self-correcting? Arthur stepped forward again. He reached out, not with power, but with memory. He showed them Atlantis as it was, as it became. He showed them the Wraith choosing restraint, the ancients relinquishing control, worlds stumbling, failing, standing again without being guided. He showed them uncertainty. The presence recoiled slightly. Rodney whispered, It does not like that. Arthur smiled faintly. Because uncertainty cannot be predicted. The conservators pressed harder. Arthur staggered as probability collapsed around him. Futures flickered, some bright, many dark. Arthur planted the trident against the floor. You want equilibrium? He projected. So do we, but equilibrium without choice is stagnation. The presence hesitated. The ancient stared in awe. They are listening, Arthur continued. This galaxy is not finished. It is learning. The pressure eased slightly. The conservators shifted their assessment. Rodney exhaled. Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Arthur's voice wavered. I am not convincing them. Then what are you doing? Shepard asked. Arthur smiled weakly, inviting them to watch. The presence withdrew incrementally, its geometry dissolving into softer patterns. A final sensation lingered. Delay. The conservators receded. Atlantis sagged as systems stabilized. Rodney collapsed into a chair. I officially declare that talking galaxies out of being erased is above my pay grade. Arthur slumped against the railing. That was not victory. Taylor approached. No, but it was time. Arthur nodded. Time is the only thing we needed. Outside, the ocean shimmered under starlight. The galaxy had been spared. For now. And Arthur felt something new settle in his chest. Not power, responsibility shared. The galaxy exhaled, not all at once, not evenly, but enough that the immediate pressure eased, like a storm front drifting just far enough away to let people step outside and look at the sky again. Atlantis entered a strange new phase. It was no longer a weapon, no longer a sanctuary, no longer a symbol of authority. It became a city. Arthur walked its corridors alone more often now, not because he was unwelcome, but because he needed the quiet. The city no longer responded to him with instant compliance. Doors waited, lights adjusted gradually, systems asked instead of obeyed. He liked that. It reminded him that power unused was still power, but power shared was responsibility. Ronan found him one evening standing at the edge of a balcony overlooking the ocean. The city was partially submerged, lights rippling through the water like stars fallen into the sea. Ronan leaned against the railing. "You almost got us erased from existence." Arthur smiled, faintly. "I almost convinced them not to." Ronan snorted. "Next time, maybe warn us before you talk to universe janitors." Arthur laughed quietly, then grew serious. "They will return." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Soon." "Not soon," Arthur corrected, "but inevitably." Ronan studied him. "And what happens then?" Arthur looked out across the water. "That depends on whether the galaxy proves them wrong." Ronan crossed his arms. "You make it sound like a test." Arthur nodded. "It is." From that day forward, Atlantis changed how it engaged the galaxy. Intervention became invitation. Technology became teaching rather than enforcement. Worlds that asked for help were offered knowledge, not solutions. Some failed anyway. Arthur insisted they be allowed to. Rodney argued with him constantly. "People are dying on those worlds," Rodney snapped during one briefing. "We could fix it." Arthur met his gaze. "Or we could delay it until it happens worse later." Rodney slammed his hands on the table. "You sound like an ancient." Arthur shook his head. "No, I sound like someone who learned from them." The Wraith delegation arrived weeks later, not with warships, with questions. Their representative, a tall figure with pallid skin and controlled hunger, stood beneath Atlantis's open sky. The ocean air seemed to unsettle him. "We are changing," the Wraith said, "but not fast enough." Arthur nodded. "Change hurts." The Wraith's eyes flicked to the sea. "We feel the conservators watching." Arthur's expression hardened. "Then you understand the stakes." The Wraith inclined its head. "We wish to survive without becoming what we were." Arthur extended his hand. "Then you are no longer my enemy." The handshake did not erase centuries of blood, but it cracked the door open. Elsewhere, other powers took notice. Human worlds debated whether Atlantis had grown too passive. Some wanted Arthur to take command, to enforce peace, to become exactly what the ancients once were. He refused every time. Shepard cornered him after one such meeting. You could end wars with a gesture. Arthur met his eyes, and create dependence that lasts millennia. Shepard sighed. "I hate when you are right." Arthur smiled. "You would hate it more if I was wrong." The first real test came without warning. A star began to destabilize near a developing system. Natural, but accelerated by ancient interference buried deep within the planet's crust. A relic left behind by an ancient experiment long forgotten. The planet's inhabitants prayed for salvation. Arthur did not answer immediately. Atlantis watched. Ronan glared. "You are really going to let a sun explode?" Arthur closed his eyes. "I am going to give them a choice." He projected a message, not instructions, understanding. The people learned what was happening, why, what the odds were, how to evacuate, how to try to stabilize the star themselves if they dared. Many fled, some stayed. Against impossible odds, they succeeded, not without loss, not without sacrifice, but they did it themselves. The conservators' presence stirred faintly. Rodney noticed it first. "They are recalculating." Arthur nodded, as they should. The galaxy began to change in subtle ways, not safer, not cleaner, but alive with momentum. Arthur felt himself changing too. His connection to Atlantis softened. He could still command it if he chose, but he chose not to. One night, he found himself sitting in the armory, staring at the trident resting against the wall. Ronan entered and stopped short. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The same look as the first day. The what the hell kind of look? Ronan broke it first. "You ever think about leaving?" Arthur considered the question. "Sometimes," Ronan nodded. "Me too." Arthur smiled. "But not yet." Ronan smirked. "Good, because if you leave, people might start thinking for themselves too much." Arthur laughed, real and unguarded. The ocean outside surged gently against the city. Atlantis endured, not as a monument, as a witness. And somewhere far beyond the stars, the conservators waited, uncertain for the first time in their endless existence. The waiting changed everything. Not the waiting of fear, the waiting of observation. Arthur felt it constantly now, not pressure, not threat. A quiet awareness that something vast was paying attention, measuring not strength or dominance, but resilience. Atlantis adjusted to that awareness. Subtle shifts rippled through the city's systems. Power routing favored sustainability over output. Defensive protocols remained intact but dormant, like a coiled muscle choosing rest over tension. Rodney hated it. "The city is judging us," he muttered while pacing the control room. "I do not like being judged by a building." Arthur leaned against the railing. "It is not judging." Rodney stopped. "Then what is it doing?" Arthur smiled faintly. "Learning restraint." That answer did not help Rodney at all. The first internal fracture came from Earth. A delegation arrived through the gate carrying authority, urgency, and barely disguised impatience. They wanted results. They wanted certainty. They wanted Arthur to act like a god. "You are sitting on the most powerful city ever built," one representative said sharply, "and you are choosing to do nothing." Arthur's voice was calm. "I am choosing to do less harm." "That is not acceptable," the representative snapped. "People are dying while you philosophize." Arthur met their gaze. People have always been dying. The question is whether they die as pawns or as participants in their own future. The room went silent. Shepard watched the exchange carefully. "You cannot control the galaxy," Arthur said softly. "And neither can I. The moment I pretend otherwise, the conservators will be proven right." The delegation left angry. Arthur did not stop them. Later, alone in the observation deck, Arthur felt the ocean press gently against the city's shields. He rested his hand against the transparent barrier. "I am not certain I am doing this correctly," he admitted quietly. The city did not answer. Taylor joined him. "Leadership is not certainty," she said. "It is responsibility in the absence of it." Arthur nodded. "That may be the most frightening definition I have heard." Taylor smiled. good. The next threat did not announce itself with fleets or cosmic entities. It arrived as silence. Multiple stargates across the Pegasus Galaxy began to fail, not explode, not deactivate. They simply stopped responding. Rodney stared at the data. This is not a malfunction, it is selective. Arthur felt the pull immediately. Ancient, but not the ancients he knew. A hidden network activated, one designed not to dominate or guide, but to seal. Someone had decided the galaxy was too dangerous to remain connected. Ronan clenched his fists. Someone is trying to cage the galaxy. Arthur nodded grimly. And they believe they are protecting it. The signal traced back to a dormant ancient enclave buried beneath an ocean world. Survivors who had never ascended, never evolved, never forgiven the galaxy for failing them. They saw Arthur not as balance, but as proof that restraint failed. They sent a message. If you do not take control, we will remove the choice entirely, Rodney swore. They are going to isolate entire civilizations. Arthur closed his eyes and condemned them to stagnation. Shepard looked at him. So what do we do? Arthur opened his eyes. We go to them. The ocean world was ancient in every sense. Cities beneath water, shields grown rather than built, technology fused with biology. The ancients there were cautious, bitter, afraid. You let chaos spread, their leader accused. You let false gods fall and did not replace them. Arthur stepped forward. Because gods should not be replaced. The ancient's expression hardened. Then you doom the galaxy. Arthur shook his head. No, I trust it. That trust will kill billions. Arthur's voice did not waver. Control already did. The debate lasted days. No weapons were drawn, no lightning summoned. Arthur showed them futures, not promises, possibilities, worlds that adapted, worlds that failed, worlds that surprised even him. The ancient enclave hesitated, and the conservators stirred. They were watching this too. The ancient leader finally spoke. If we open the gates, if we abandon isolation, and chaos follows, you will bear that responsibility. Arthur nodded. I already do. The gates reopened. Across the galaxy, connections restored. Trade resumed. Travel returned. Knowledge flowed again. The conservators receded slightly. Not approval, acknowledgement. Back in Atlantis, Ronan cornered Arthur near the armory. You realize every bad thing. That happens from now on. People will blame you. Arthur smiled, tiredly. They already do. Ronan studied him. You okay with that? Arthur looked at the trident, then at the city, then at the ocean beyond. I would rather be blamed for freedom than praised for control. Ronan shook his head with a crooked grin. You are the strangest king I have ever met. Arthur laughed. I am not a king. Ronan raised an eyebrow. Sure looks like one. Arthur met his gaze. Only if people choose to follow. Outside, the ocean shifted with slow, patient motion. The galaxy remained dangerous, uncertain, alive. And somewhere beyond perception, the conservators continued to wait. The waiting reached a turning point. Not because the conservators returned, but because the galaxy stopped waiting for them. Arthur noticed it first in the background noise of Atlantis. The subtle shifts in traffic patterns through the gate. The kinds of requests coming in. Fewer pleas for intervention, more invitations to witness, to advise, to stand beside rather than above. It was working, not perfectly, but genuinely. That frightened some people more than any external threat ever had. A coalition formed quietly. Human worlds, former Wraith territories, independent systems that had never trusted Atlantis fully. They called themselves the Continuity Council. Their concern was simple. Arthur was changing the rules. They summoned him, not with force, with expectation. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a ringed world with no ancient ruins, no hidden weapons, no legacy to lean on. Arthur arrived alone, no trident, no armor, just a man who had learned to carry impossible responsibility without letting it crush him. The council chamber buzzed with tension. "You destabilize the balance," one delegate said immediately. Arthur nodded. "Yes." Another leaned forward. "The false gods are gone. The old powers fractured. You created a vacuum." Arthur met her gaze. "Vacuum implies emptiness. What exists now is choice. Choice leads to conflict," a third snapped. Arthur did not argue. "Yes." Silence stretched. They expected justification. They did not get it. Finally, one voice spoke softer than the rest. "What happens when the conservators return?" Arthur exhaled slowly. "Then the galaxy will answer for itself." "That is not a plan," someone said. Arthur smiled faintly. "It is the only honest one." They dismissed him without resolution. Arthur did not feel defeated. He felt relieved. Back on Atlantis, the city felt different again. Not heavier, not lighter, centered. Rodney noticed too. "You realize you are becoming irrelevant, right?" Arthur laughed. "That was always the goal." Rodney frowned. "I do not like that answer." "You will learn to," Arthur said. The next crisis came not from ancient powers, but from something far smaller. A single world refused help. A world devastated by internal war. Its people rejecting all outside assistance after centuries of manipulation by false gods and well-meaning saviors alike. They shut their gate. They broadcast a single message: "Leave us alone." The galaxy watched. Arthur honored it. Weeks passed, then months. The world rebuilt slowly, painfully, without miracles. When they finally reopened their gate, their message was different. "We survived." The conservators stirred again. Arthur felt it like a distant tide pulling against the shore. Rodney tracked the anomaly. "They are coming back, not fully, just observing closer." Arthur nodded. "They want a verdict." The verdict arrived sooner than expected. A star collapsed prematurely in a distant system. Natural, unpreventable. The planet's inhabitants had no gate, no escape. Arthur watched the projections. He could intervene. Atlantis could intervene. He chose not to. The planet died. Millions perished. The weight of it nearly broke him. Ronan found him hours later in the armory, sitting on the floor beside the trident, staring at nothing. "You could not save them all," Ronan said quietly. Arthur's voice was raw. "I could have saved them." Ronan shook his head. "Then you would have taught the galaxy to wait for you." Arthur clenched his fists. "I let them die." Ronan knelt beside him. "You let reality exist." Arthur looked up. "That does not feel noble." Ronan met his gaze. "Neither does pretending you are a god." The conservators returned that night, not as pressure, as presence. The galaxy felt them. Arthur stood on the central platform. City lights dimmed, the ocean calm beyond the shields. They assessed everything. Every war prevented, every life lost, every choice made without him. Arthur spoke first. "I will not beg." The presence shifted. Not accusation, inquiry. Arthur continued. "If this galaxy fails, it will fail honestly, not preserved in stasis, not curated into obedience." He waited. The conservators reached a conclusion. Not approval, acceptance. The galaxy was viable, not safe, not controlled, but alive. They withdrew, not forever, but far enough. Rodney sank into a chair. "So that is it. We passed the cosmic audit." Arthur shook his head. "No, we earned probation." Shepard laughed softly. I will take it. Atlantis settled into quiet, not peace, but purpose. Arthur returned the trident to its resting place, not as a symbol, as a reminder. Power was never the point. Standing when it mattered was. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no ceremonies, no declarations of victory, no moment where the stars themselves seemed brighter because a judgment had been delayed. Life simply continued, and that, Arthur realized, was the truest outcome possible. Atlantis returned to a rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Gates opened and closed. Ships came and went. People argued over resource allocations, cultural exchanges, reconstruction timelines. The work of living replaced the urgency of survival. Arthur found himself needed less. That was the point. He spent long hours walking the lower levels of the city, places few visited anymore. Old ancient corridors where the walls still carried faint echoes of voices long gone. He listened, not for commands, but for reminders. One evening, Ronan joined him near the edge of a partially flooded promenade. Bioluminescent sea life drifted lazily beyond the shield. Ronan crossed his arms. "You ever going to leave?" Arthur considered the question carefully. "Not yet." Ronan nodded. "Good." Arthur smirked. "That was not an invitation to ask me to stay forever." Ronan grinned. "Would not dream of it." They stood in silence for a while. Then Ronan tilted his head. "You know, first time I saw you, I thought you were just another problem that hit really hard." Arthur laughed. "Fair assessment." "Still kinda true," Ronan added. Arthur accepted that. Rodney burst into the promenade mid-thought, waving a tablet. "I have good news and bad news." Arthur sighed. "There is never just good news with you. Good news is the city's ancient interface has fully decoupled from your neural signature." Arthur blinked. "That is good," Rodney nodded. "Very. You are officially not required for anything anymore." Arthur smiled. "And the bad news?" Rodney grimaced. "The city asked me what it should do next." Arthur laughed, full and genuine. "Tell it to ask the people who live here." Rodney stared. "That is horrifying." "Exactly," Arthur said. The next day, Arthur stood in the gate room as a team prepared to depart for a newly contacted world. No crisis, no war, just first contact. Shepard clapped him on the shoulder. "You are not coming." Arthur shook his head. "They do not need me." Shepard studied him. "You sure you're okay with that?" Arthur looked at the active gate, light rippling like liquid possibility. "For the first time in my life, yes." As the team stepped through, Arthur felt no pull to follow, no destiny tugging at him, just quiet satisfaction. Later, he stood alone on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The trident rested nearby, untouched. He thought of Atlantis, of the ancients who built it, of the mistakes they made trying to shepherd the galaxy into perfection. He thought of the Wraith choosing restraint, of worlds choosing freedom, of mortals facing impossible odds without waiting for gods, and of himself, once a king, once a weapon, once a solution, now something simpler, a witness. The ocean shifted gently beneath the city. Tides moved, life continued. Somewhere far beyond perception, the conservators turned their attention elsewhere. Not because this galaxy was safe, but because it no longer required supervision. Arthur smiled, not because everything was right, but because it was real. He picked up the trident, not to wield it, but to carry it back to its place. A reminder, not a throne. As he walked away, Atlantis did not react. It did not bow. It did not respond. And that was perfect.